Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Thirsty Thursday live stream. And I hope you guys are having a great day, had a good week, and ready for Thursday. So, tonight we have a great and awesome content creator, teacher, pen tester, web app. He's from TCM Security, Alex. So, we'll let him introduce himself. But if you guys have any questions during the stream, please leave it in the little comment section and we'll get to it as soon as we can. So, let me bring him in and we'll have some fun. What's up, Alex?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks
Good, good,
for
good.
having me on.
No, thank you. Appreciate it. I always tune into your streams whenever I can. Obviously, it's during work hours, so when you guys do your, it's not, it's pretty much what is it? It's 7 or 8 o'clock for you. For
Yeah, I think it's like 5 p.m. for me, and then it's kind of like midday
yeah,
ET, but obviously, yeah, time zones are always crazy, so.
yeah. Awesome, awesome. So I'm loving, obviously what you guys do over at TCM. I'm always a big fan for ages. I think even before you came on. But yeah, so for those that don't know on this side of the house, who is Alex? And yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, as much or as little as you want.
All right, free reign. Yeah, so I suppose, I mean, career-wise, I followed kind of like a somewhat typical path. I ended up doing studying computing at a university. I did have like a bit of a weird, you know, I kind of dropped out of school before university and then came back a little bit later. Didn't get on with some of my teachers very well. But yeah, studied computing, did a year as a dev, and then decided that I was a bit bored solving the same problems, kind of like time and time again. And I was like, oh, security looks interesting. And that was 9 or 10 years ago. And got my first security job working for British Police Force, working more on like information assurance, looking at malicious emails, helping out with some internal investigations. Um, just kind of like some interesting stuff like that. So, some stuff I can't really talk about too much, but
Hmm.
like when stuff goes crazy. So it's mostly just helping out with those kinds of internal investigations. Learned a little bit about forensics and stuff. And then where did I move after that? I think I moved to a housing association. Did a little bit of incident response, did a little bit of network security, started a little bit of pen testing, and then moved into the finance sector, did a lot more pen testing, web app pen testing, and also was part of the best and the worst thing about being part of a two-man security team. The best thing is you learn everything. The worst thing is that everything is your responsibility. So I don't regret my time there, but I wouldn't do it again,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. But yeah, they had a big payments platform, and that was really where I decided like AppSec's my jam.
Hmm.
And then I moved out to Japan, worked for a big company called Rakuten for a while. Ended up looking after DevSecOps, cybersecurity training, and security architecture globally. Started some teams, worked with a lot of awesome people, came back to the UK, and saw Heath's LinkedIn post saying that, hey, they were looking for content creators. And I was like, I've been teaching devs security. I could do that. And then here I am at TCM a year later. So it's been a year at TCM already, which is cool. So that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. So, like, obviously for TCM security, what is like your day-to-day stuff like for those who may not know? Like, yeah, we see you on live streams, we see you put content out, but what is like your, you know, are you a pen tester? Are you doing penetration testing for them, or are you just on the back end just doing some fun, you know, content creation?
Just fun stuff. Yeah, so I'm not actively pen testing right now. So basically my week is split up. Like Monday and Tuesdays, I'm making YouTube videos and live streaming, writing blog posts, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays, I'm working on projects. So building courses. So we released like Practical Bug Bounty, updated the Practical Ethical Hacker course. I released the API hacking course as well. So mostly building courses, delivering training, doing some live classes here and there. So yeah, that's basically my role. So I'm like fully content at the moment, which is quite nice.
Cool. And obviously, I want to say congratulations. I saw that you did your PMPT, so
Oh
kudos to
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
So you do have your OSCP as well, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah. I cleared the OCP a few years. So pre-Active Directory. That's what I tell people. I'm like, I got it before all the big changes. So I had to do
Mm-hmm.
buffer overflow, which was fun,
Yep.
which is the easy part of the old OSCP. And yeah, it was good. I enjoyed my exam. I failed it the first time round, but I made up for it because I cleared it second time around in about 4.5 hours or under 5 hours. So I feel like even though I went off the rails a bit first time, it was the Windows Privesk that really got me the first time. I wasn't prepared for that. Second time I kind of nailed it, so I was very happy.
Nice. So obviously, there's a lot of people. Obviously, this is pre-AD stuff, right? So the PMPT has some, you know, is technically owning a domain, right? So what is your comparison? Which one is more difficult in your opinion?
Oh, difficult is subjective. um, I don't know which one's difficult. They're very different. So my perspective on both is OSCP I think makes you really good at troubleshooting and working um, with a variety of like difficult situations. And as Privesk is a big part of OSCP, you
Mm-hmm.
really have to dial in your privilege escalation skills. Whereas PMPT, I think, prepares you more for like if you were to step into a pen testing job day one and you were given a pen test, it prepares you to be able to actually do that pen test rather than be like, how do I connect to this or how do I do this or how do I deal with Active Directory or and things like this. And most pen testing is obviously very Active Directory focused. So I think, yeah, working with like troubleshooting exploits, getting things to work, chaining exploits, privilege escalation is very much OSCP side, Active Directory, attacking users, attacking an organization. OSINT is very PMPT side. So I don't regret, like, I wouldn't not do either. I think they're both very good and both very different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I can't speak to the current OSCP AD. They did update the training materials, I think, just before I did before I cleared the exam. But it was really like, just building like LDAP scripts and stuff like that. So I hope that the OSCP contents for AD is better these
Mm-hmm.
days,
Mm-hmm.
especially since it's part of the exam now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's definitely good input, obviously, because that is an exam. I'm thinking about doing like the old school when you did, I don't know if you have your CCNA, but like back then you have like your CCENT, ICND1, you get your little, you get your feet wet, and then you go for the ICND2 to get your CCNA.
Right.
I was thinking about like, okay, let me do the PJPT first just to be, okay, get my feet wet and then go for the PMPT. But I keep hearing from many folks just go for the PMPT, and I'm like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, just do it. Just do it. I mean, you get a free retake anyway, so what's the worst that can happen? Like, you'll just
Yeah,
be better prepared even if it all goes south.
fair
So,
enough.
you
Fair
know,
enough.
and I think the main thing, like, even though I'm not actively pen testing at the moment, I've done, I feel like my fair share of pen testing and obviously more web app stuff. But when I sat the PMPT exam, I did actually feel like I was doing a pen test. It was like the closest I've ever seen a CTF come to like what it actually feels like doing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's quite cool. That was really a nice surprise. I think the only other one that really kind of comes close to that feeling is the Raster Labs. Also Raster Mouse's Raster Labs, and
Mm-hmm.
I went through the CRTO. I haven't done the exam yet. It's on my long list of things to do.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was going through the materials, I was like, yeah, this is pen testing. I,
Yeah.
I know, like, so this is my experience with pen testing was quite close to that. So
Yeah, and that's what I think is super cool about the PMPT, right? So it's not like, and if all of those folks that know me, I was never really into like the whole CTF stuff. Like, it was never, I never played a video game in my life. facts. You probably heard that before. Like, I'm not really into the whole nerdy life, if you know what I
Mm.
mean. So it's like, okay, like when you're studying for like OSCP and I guess OSWP is, all did you do OSWP as well, like the wireless
No,
stuff?
I didn't do the wireless. I never really needed to do wireless testing. It was never in my scope of work, so I was like,
Yeah, fair
you know.
enough. And it's very, when you're doing a Wi-Fi pen test, you know, if hacking or going against something like Radius or LDAP integration, you set up a landing page, have them authenticate and harvest those credentials anyway with like a captive portal with something like that, like uh, Wi-Fi Pumpkin, or you can use a Wi-Fi Pineapple or whatever you want
Yeah.
to use,
Yeah.
something like that. So do you guys do wireless penetration testing? You guys do, right?
It is part of, yeah. So like TCM covers basically in terms of pen testing, everything. So like red teaming, pen testing, internal, external, even physical pen tests as well.
Mm-hmm.
Heath has some cool stories of like picking locks and stealing
Mm-hmm.
stuff and getting into buildings and
Mm-hmm.
drone recon. So
Yep.
the full suite. So we have, yeah, people for everything really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Physical stuff. I did one last, what, 2, 3 years ago. Like I flew out to Arizona and did a physical. And obviously, I don't look nerdy. I can just shoot the shit, talk. And I was able to get pretty far into like an MDF, plugged my laptop right into a switch, created a spam port, and use Wireshark, create a. If you guys don't know what spam ports are, it's a monitoring port on a layer 2 switch. And so you come from a network systems background prior to getting into dev and then pen testing?
Mostly just dev. So like my network skills are like, you know, questionable.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I know enough to get by, but honestly, like, yeah, it's probably one of my biggest weaknesses is actually is networking, I think. Yeah, for sure. Because I always kind of leaned more on my coding and development skills. I think throughout my entire career, and that's probably why I do a lot more AppSec because it just comes more naturally. I like code. Code's cool.
Yeah, and
So
that's cool. And the reason why I'm saying that is because for people out there that's like, okay, thinking about the PMPT, for example, and then we'll get into more like how to get into more web app stuff. So like PMPT, you didn't come from a system admin background. You didn't do
not at
Active
all.
Directory. You didn't do networking. So obviously, I think you can just tell me to shut up if be from the recon or the due diligence I did for the research on the PMPT. You get inside of a network, so you have to whatever, however you get from the outside in, you
Yeah.
do whatever. So when you're inside your network, now you have to tinker with Active Directory, and so did you find being I don't know your level of AD, but like, did you study hardcore the PEH, the Active Directory section, or you like, okay, I think I could do this.
So
Let me just.
yeah, for me, because I'd done pen testing before, I'd studied Active Directory quite a while ago. In fact, it was the first thing, I think a few years ago when I needed to update my Active Directory skills. That was my first introduction to Heath. Heath didn't know I existed at the time, but I was watching his live streams and reading his stuff and doing his courses and stuff. So so to prep for PMPT, I just brushed up. I kind of reviewed my notes. I went back over. I actually went through the course. So I think I put this in my blog post as well. Is basically I wrote a game plan. I was like, okay, right. If you're doing OSINT, these are the websites I use. These are the things I'm going to check. And
Hmm.
I created a bullet list, a bullet
Hmm.
pointed list. And then same for external. And to be honest, most external is web app stuff. So I wasn't too worried about that part. I was like, I can deal with web apps. That's fine. Um, and so I was like, okay, just, I put some bullet points in, was like, just to make sure that I didn't go into any rabbit holes. And then internally, I had my Active Directory, and then I was like, okay, when we're in the network, these are the things I'm going to check. These are the tools I'm going to run.
Hmm.
And even if I find something with a tool or if I find something with an attack, I'll note it down and I'll probably come back to it. And that kind of saves you from going into a rabbit hole as soon as you get something. As soon as you get like some little nugget, you're like, oh, this looks like it could be the way. And then you've lost 5 hours suddenly.
Exactly.
So I do all of my attacks and then I come back to them and revisit them. And then I also had like a checklist. My Prevesk skills are reasonable, I think, because I quite enjoy Prevesk as well. So I had a list of things that I was going to check in terms of Prevesk privilege escalation. And again, that was basically based on the course contents, because I know that Heath isn't going to throw in something like that he hasn't really covered in the course. Of course, there might be a complication or a situation where you have to think a little bit or be a little bit outside the box, but if he doesn't talk about, let me think of an attack like, let's go into web apps. So prototype pollution isn't in the course, and race conditions aren't in the course. They're not going to be on the PMPT exam because it's not covered in the course. So, my game plan was basically based around the course content. So I went back through and was like, yeah, I can't really remember how to, how this attack works, or I can't really I haven't used Responder in like 2 years, so I rewatched that video and made sure I was prepared that way. And I think
like Responder dash I ETH, ETH0, and then your switches DWP or whatever. Yeah, and it's funny because I talked to a buddy. He's like, he passed it, and a few people passed, and they're like, just do it. And now you're saying just do it, and it's like, fuck, dude, should I just do it?
Yeah, for sure. Sign up. You can start tomorrow, right? You get 5 days as well. So the thing is, you can do it around if you're quite busy. I mean, I did mine Friday and I think I cleared it by Sunday. It took me something about 20-25 hours to get domain admin. And but I on Saturday, I can't remember exactly, my neighbor came over because he wanted to chat about something. And then he ended up staying for dinner. And then I lost a whole night on Saturday, but I've got 5 days. And I was like, it's fine. I've got time. You're not expected to sit there for 16 hours a day for 5 days in a row, and do it. That's not what it's designed to be like, 5-day pen test, but probably it's more like 3 days of work, if that makes sense. So you've got some grace in there.
Yeah, fair enough. But I think I might do the 2-part just to keep it safe, because I'm not doing this all day every day, right? So it's not like my everyday thing. I do a lot more defensive stuff, and blue team and responding and doing all that kind of stuff. Sometimes we would do some offensive red team stuff, but I'm more on the even though my channel is more on the offensive side, I don't really do it all the time.
But it all helps, and fundamentally, if you know the attacks and you know how the systems work, you'll be fine. You'll be totally fine.
Yeah, cool. So now we'll transition into web application stuff, which this topic is about. So me personally, I did watch some of your stuff. Even I forgot which box. It was about a month or 2 ago. I think it was internal. When you're I don't remember WP scan, right? You had your token, and you're like, don't steal my token, guys. You can go get your fucking free one on the internet. That was funny. I was like, that's funny. But so stuff like that, right? Like WP scan. You may not run that every day. And when I saw we have to enumerate the users to find that admin, and then SpongeBob or whatever the password was. It was like 2 months ago, so I don't really recall exactly. But
you remember more than I do though about this box, so that's
I have a pretty good memory if I watch something, I'm pretty, I take my fish oil pills, right, from my memory. I'm getting old, man, so I need to take all the supplements I can. But so now, someone like me, I don't know anything about web pen testing. Where can we start, and how can we start? We can talk the PMPT, the TCM security route, or just how you got into it, or all from the free resources to what do you think is good to get into?
Yeah, so I feel like number one, there's no excuse for not being good at web app pen testing, and that's mostly because of Portswigger, and it's completely free. And the labs are great, the learning material is great, and so anybody watching, if you don't want to pay for anything, Portswigger is the place to go, and it covers, you know, so much stuff. Um, but so kind of before that, if you're thinking, hey, you know, I wanna become a web app pen tester, really, I think understanding how the technology works, and I see this as well because I review the like the reports that come in from from our web app exam, and I've taught web app security to it must be thousands of developers now, because when I was at Rakuten, I was running regular classes for developers and things. I think the number one mistake is not really understanding the technology and how it works. So really getting a grips of how client server architecture works, how cookies work, how HTTP headers work. And I'll see really common mistakes, and people will be like, oh yeah, you know, this is weird or this is quirky. And it's like, think about how the web application is supposed to behave. Think about HTTP. And then they're like, oh yeah, okay, so that's this. And it's like, yeah, exactly. And I feel like most people rush into web app pen testing when actually, if you learn how web apps work and maybe build one or two small web applications, nothing crazy, you're going to slingshot your way, like way past loads of problems. So definitely like start with the fundamentals, build like a little web app, understand how web applications work, how the headers work, and you know why they're there and things like that, and then start doing things like Portswigger Lab, or if you want to do a course, then we have like the practical bug bounty course, or we also have the web section in the PH. But you know, it's totally up to you. It depends on, you know, your learning style. If you like videos, then great, take the TCM courses. If you're okay with just text and labs, you know, check out Portswigger. And so yeah, that would be really my biggest thing is build one or two web applications. That'll put you ahead of probably 80% of people who want to get into web app pen testing. And in terms of your like troubleshooting and I always like call it like hacking antenna, when you see some weird behavior, it's gonna like really start to tune that in. And a lot of people ask me about programming. I quite enjoy programming, so and I think it's not a requirement to do web app pen testing. You don't have to be, well, you don't need to be a programmer at all. But learning a little bit of code, you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't learn a little bit and learn, you know, some basic programming and learn how to read and review code. There's always situations where that's going to make your life easier. So that would be my path, right? Learn a little, you know, build a couple of web apps, start learning about offensive security, and then try and supplement, you know, your knowledge with a little bit of code. And then beyond that, you can start looking at things like, you know, web application architecture and how that impacts security and container security, deployment, DevSecOps, CI/CD pipelines, scanners, scaling and deployment, design patterns. All of that stuff still exists, but honestly, you don't really need it until, you know, later on. Or if you're going to be part of a internal application security team, you know, you're working very closely with developers or AppSec, you're like an AppSec engineer that's working on a single application, then those things I think become a little bit more important. But yeah, I mean, keeping it simple is definitely the way to go. There's always new stuff to learn anyway, so why make life hard for yourself? So.
All right, so I want to ask a question because I never built a web app. You know, I stood up, you know, IIS servers and, you know, being on the like an intranet and like an internal SharePoint before the whole cloud started. This is when I was doing system admin stuff. But now that's my next question, right? So where to start? Like, how do I build a basic web app? How do I do that?
I mean, there's so many resources. So for me, I mean, if you want to kind of get started from zero, like W3 Schools has pretty good tutorials. And actually, when I teach my SQL class, I'm like, hey, do like the first 10, my SQL injection class, do like the first 10 or 12 SQL tutorials from W3 Schools. And it teaches you from the ground up, you know, from the very basics, how to do SQL, how to build web applications, and things like this, and in all sorts of different technologies. So you can just pick one that you think is cool or whatever, because honestly, once you know one programming language, and they're not all the same, but you have a big step up when you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at others. So W3 schools from the very beginning. If you already know a little bit about web apps and you want to keep up with like the current state of things, Web Dev Simplified on YouTube is definitely my go-to channel. And of course, like coding with AI is a big thing now. So he's just released a course on how to code with AI. Um, I use ChatGPT to troubleshoot a lot. So if I'm using
Mm-hmm.
a library and I import it and I get a load of errors, I'm like, "Pff, okay, I just throw it to ChatGPT and I'm like, what's going on here? And then usually what it comes back with, I can understand it and fix my issue. I do have Copilot as well, but I don't really use it that much, to be honest. I should cancel my Copilot subscription. It's not that great. But yeah, there's a lot of really good courses. And then if you're really serious, like if you want to be like, okay, I want to add programming as a solid skill, Code with Mosh is a great resource, but it's a paid resource, so you pay like a subscription for it. But it's going to teach you to be like a software engineer basically. So it
Mm-hmm.
depends how deep you want to go. And yeah, for me, like I enjoy writing code, so I like follow Code with Mosh's courses, kind of in the doing one or two every few days. But yeah,
So what about Code Academy? What are your thoughts about Code
yeah,
Academy?
Code is also a great place. And I would say also the Odin Project as well.
Or
So
mm-hmm.
those are also great resources. And to be honest, most of the time they're kind of all teaching you really the same thing. It comes down to how you want to learn, and whether you're want to if you're actually putting the effort in, because sometimes when you're learning to code, if you're just copying it out, that's not gonna do it. I definitely recommend take notes, and put references, and then go beyond what it's teaching you. So if it teaches you how to write a function that is similar but does something different, expand on what you're learning. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess like now since we're on that topic, do you do anything with bug bounties?
I do a little bit of bug bounty. So I'm kind of like on and off because like
Mm-hmm.
time is just fleeting because I
Mm-hmm.
like we were saying earlier, like InfoSec's like a lifestyle, right? So
Yep.
beyond my 40 hours a week that I do at work, I'm also doing a little bit of study on the side. I'm also building CTFs in my like spare time. I'm also doing like some like mentoring and stuff on the side as well, just for free for some people that I know. Um, and so beyond all of that, and then trying to keep somewhat of a, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you're trying to get to the gym every so often and things like this. It's like, yeah, I wish I had more time to do bug bouncy, and I definitely would if I did have more time. But at the moment, it's like a couple of hours a week.
Cool.
So I'll usually just find a target that I get invited to. I have some automated bots that monitor some targets that I'm looking at like long term. So if there's a change pushed to the website, I'm the first to know about it, and then I can start looking at it.
Yeah, so obviously with that, I was gonna ask like, what do you use like HackerOne, BugCrowd? Like, do you have a specific one that you normally target for their programs, or you just like willy-nilly wing it?
So I'm on Integrity pretty much, because we did like a collaboration with Integrity,
Mm-hmm.
for the practical bug bounty course, and I already had an account on there, and I get invited to quite a lot of like private programs, so I just stuck with it. I do have an account on HackerOne from many years ago, but it was at a time where I wasn't really doing much bug bounty, so I don't really have anything on there. So I just since our collaboration, I've been doing a little bit more bug bouncy, and I just stuck with Integrity. Although there was no real reason for me to jump. I think all the programs are good though. I can't think of a good reason to like why one would be way better than another.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Cool. And so I guess there's some conferences coming up like in obviously I'm not sure overseas, but here in the States we have Hack Space Con, we have, I think like I guess like Defcon or Wild Wild West Hack and Fest, and
You guys have the
Uh,
best conference names. All of our conferences are so boring. It's like Security Conference 367 and then 368. Like just we just don't have cool names for our conferences.
do you plan on coming to the States this year to any conferences?
So I'm not sure. I really hope I can get out to Defcon. I've never been, and I really want to go. So fingers crossed. I'll be at Defcon. I do have some conferences lined up around Europe, so I'll be at a couple of different places. I usually go to OWASP, Global AppSec, if I can get out there. And sometimes I'll be at a conference somewhere, in the east. Because I lived in Tokyo before.
Hmm.
I have people I can hit up and stay with if I'm heading over to Tokyo, or around there. So yeah, definitely Europe. Fingers crossed, DefCon. But we'll see. Yeah.
Nice. So, side note, you said how long did you live in Tokyo?
I think it's like four years, less than 5 years. I think it was about four or five.
Do you
I'd have
speak
to.
Japanese? Like, can you have a
Yeah, my
conversation?
Japanese is okay. Yeah, I mean, far from business level, but like having conversations with people in pubs and things like that. I mean, you kind of have to in Japan because really the level of English is quite low. So, outside of like the people I worked with, like getting around and just doing stuff generally is very difficult if you don't learn Japanese. So yeah, it's okay. It's getting rusty now for sure.
Yeah,
Like since I haven't really been using it. So
and the same. Like, I took Mandarin for 4 years, and I had a friend from Taiwan, and I would speak Mandarin all the time with him, right?
yeah,
Since probably until I was like about 22, 23. And then he actually moved, and obviously I don't, as we grew after college and things just start, spreading apart, and you start moving on your life, and things started. But like if I'm going to a Chinese restaurant or something like that, I'll try to order in Chinese, but they don't speak Mandarin or Cantonese. They speak something called Fuwanese. So it's like a
right,
different kind of dialect in like the
yeah,
Chinese restaurants. I don't know why that is, but it is what it is.
yeah.
So cool. So we're talking about bug bounties, some cons, and I guess this is my last question, and we'll jump to the chat. So you got your PMPT. Are you certed out, or this year you said you're
Yeah.
studying, but anything else on the horizon from the big Alex?
So, I mean, yeah, I feel like I kind of do like for certificates are like diminishing returns, right? The first one you get is massive return on investment in terms of like getting a job and things like that.
Fair enough.
And then the second one you get is like less return, and so putting time into a cert is quite a lot of effort. But I kind of like low key I'm looking at the hack the box certifications because I want to be able to, as a content creator, recommend things to people, understand what's on the market, and also as somebody who's also actively building courses and things like that, I want to understand what is the best way to build and deliver courses.
Absolutely.
So I'm like halfway through the Hack the Box bug bounty course. I've been through all of the CRTO materials, although I probably need to go back through it because it was like more than a year ago now,
Hmm.
before I take the exam. So I'd like to take those two, and my OSWE. I never took the exam for that, which I actually booked it and then cancelled it because I was quite ill, and then never went back to do it. And a lot of my close friends and colleagues have the OSWE, so and I feel like it's kind of up my street as well because I like code.
Yeah.
So at some point I'll definitely check that off. But honestly, like I'm not pressuring myself. I'm like, if I have a month where I'm like, I've not really got anything too pressing, no big projects. I have some spare weekends, which is a rare thing. Um, I'll probably try and get one done. And apologies if you can hear my cats in the background. They every time I go on live stream, they just love to go mental. That's it. That it's
And,
it's the thing.
and they're nocturnal. And what time is it over there? 12:30?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so they're having a great time, and so yeah. If I'm
That's
writing
awesome.
emails, they sleep. As soon as I
Yeah,
start trying to record, they're up, and
yeah. No, same thing. I just got a cat about what is it, a month ago now,
yeah,
and the same thing. You go try to go to sleep all day. She sleeps, but every time I come in here, she like wah, 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 at the
yeah,
door, and you can't let her in here because she'll try to like one time, or she always sneaks her way in, but like sometimes she'll run behind my computer and then like disconnect the cable. That's
yeah,
probably why my fucking thing don't work. It's probably why
yeah,
something
yeah,
probably
yeah.
back there doesn't
I have
work.
the power button on my PC is on the top, and obviously my PC is pretty warm, so the cat likes to sleep there. So occasionally, yeah, you get all these pop-ups for like Notepad is like suddenly like, oh, do you want to save before cancel? I'm like, hit cancel on everything to not shut down my PC.
That's
But
awesome. All right, cool. So now, we have about 25 minutes. Obviously, I don't want to go past 1 a.m. your time because I know. So I guess we can check out some questions in the chat. And obviously, if you guys have any questions, throw it in there. All right, so we have one here. What would you say that between web app and network test area? All right, I'll leave that to you.
yeah, good question from Arubius. Arubius is like a regular on TCM, so good to see you. And he does he's running Hack the Box sessions on Sunday. So people who want to do Hack the Box, hit up Arubius.
Nice.
Oh, sorry, I missed the question. It's gone now. What was it? Um, oh, yeah, I see it here. So the key distinctions between a web and a network pen test. Yeah, so I mean, with a web pen test, usually your scope is just a single or single application or like a domain or a single host, right? And you're looking to exploit that application. But more often than not, I would say web app pen tests are for like external facing services. So that's your company has a payment platform or your customers are using it. So really you're looking at, how can I impact an organization's customers? How can I deface the website? How can I get cross-site scripting and things like that? Whereas with network pen test, I would say is like the scope is much wider. So we might be looking at, okay, how can we get into the network? How can we find vulnerabilities? How can we escalate our privileges? How can we become domain admin? But also within the scope of your network pen test, it might be how can we steal like business critical data, or how can we steal the customer database, for example, or how can we steal the card data that should be tokenized from the CDE, or like as part of the PCI DSS and inside the card data environments. So I would say, yeah, network pen testing is generally more holistic. And there's like a lot of different techniques. Whereas web app pen testing is just more focused on like a single application and how we can exploit it. I think that's the main difference. I feel like network pen testing is more, yeah, wider. Web app stuff is more like research, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, you're going deeper on a smaller thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Any other questions that we have here? All right.
Do you ever, do you ever perform? Oh, do you ever not perform a web application assessment on a production phone, or does it depend on? Yeah, it really depends. So I prefer testing in prod, and some clients don't like this, but most of the time, I would say 9 out of 10. In fact, maybe even more. Even if they have a test staging development environment, or like an environment where they say it's the same as prod, it's never the same as prod. So so I'm always like, hey, this just doesn't work. I mean, why are you testing? And also, again, with web app testing, you're probably testing something that's external facing, and so it should be hardened, and it's probably reasonably stable, otherwise it would have fallen over from general internet traffic anyway. So yeah, I prefer testing in production. But I was actually talking to Tips about this a little while ago, and we're also talking about web application firewalls. And we were saying like the pros and cons of testing with and without a firewall. And I think he had the best answer, where an ideal situation is where a client would whitelist us on the firewall so that we can attack an application without restriction. And then once we found stuff found the underlying issues, we'd then switch the firewall back on and see whether we can replicate them. Can we bypass the firewall, or is it giving you enough adequate protection? And then at least the client knows, what's critical, what's not critical, and do they need to patch something immediately, or is the WAF giving them protection? So yeah, but yeah, I like testing in prod. It's dangerous and it's fun.
That's awesome. Let's see what other stuff we got here. Any other fun stuff?
Compliance standards in order to perform WebApp Pentesting. I think it's good to know. A lot of testing will be compliance driven, so that's quite nice. Like especially like PCI DSS and things like that. If it's in scope for PCI DSS, especially if you're working on like a payments platform or something like that. But otherwise, I wouldn't say there are like many standards that you need to know for web app stuff. I think, yeah, not so much. I think you're probably okay.
Cool. What else is cracking? Oh, that's all you.
Yeah, code review. Yeah, so I recorded a YouTube video this morning on how to get started with code review. So in a couple of weeks, so this video will come out. I would say most of the time it's not needed for general web application assessments or pen tests. I'd say like 1 in 5 pen tests, web app pen tests, the client might ask you also for code review. I'm a big fan of code review, but mostly because I worked as part of an internal application security team. So of course, when developers were committing code, I was reviewing it and helping out there. So if you're part of an internal team, yeah, it's really important, I think, and it's very important. It's very common. But if you're working as a consultant, I would say it's less important. But code review can also help you do things like finding CVEs, reviewing open source applications and things like that as well. So it's a useful skill to have. And it depends where you're placed, whether you need it or not. But if you're part of the development lifecycle, I think so, yeah, for sure. If you're a consultant, probably don't necessarily need it.
Fair enough. Let's see, any other things we got here? Web3 bug bounty. What are your thoughts on?
Yeah, Web3 is, I wouldn't say my area of expertise. Definitely something, again, that's on my to-do list. I mean, the web's changing, not as fast as people say it is. Like, everybody's like, oh yeah, you're reading this book from 2021 and everything's out of date. And I'm like, whoa, SQL injection is more than 25 years old and we still find SQL injection. So guess what? Stuff does not change that fast. Yeah. We're just seeing the same stuff in a kind of different way. But I think with the rise of Web3 and like blockchain technology and things like that, I suppose there are a set of skills that you should develop to attack those types of applications. But I'm not rushing like it's gold rush. Like I'm not being like, oh yeah, I definitely need to add this so I can get ahead of the game. I don't see that many pen tests or I don't see a huge demand for that. There is demand, but I don't see it like a tidal wave of demand for those skills, if that makes sense. Not yet, but
Cool. Let's see. What other?
Just downloaded Zap. Pros and cons compared to Pepsi. Yeah, this is a fun topic. And actually, Tibbs also has strong opinions on this, and we chatted about it before. I think Zap is a great tool for learning. I don't really see it as a commercial or professional tool. So if you're learning web application security, great, use Zap. But as soon as you're doing web application penetration testing as a professional, you're getting paid to do it, or you're part of an organization, that organization is probably going to pay for your Burp Suite license anyway. Burp Suite's just way more powerful, way more powerful. There's no real concern. And Zap is just so many false positives. I I see it a lot. People ask me, they'll ping me and they'll be like, "Hey, I found this vulnerability. Can you help me find it?" And I'm like, false positive, because it's just a zap finding. So yeah, but again, it's useful for learning, and it is a reasonable tool if you don't have access to Burp Suite. There's nothing wrong with using it, but Burp Suite is way more powerful.
So I guess I can throw some stuff in there too. So why wouldn't you use like Burp Suite Community Edition, right? You can still use Community.
So yeah, so the thing there's a lot of people I think. Obviously the Intruder is throttled, but you can live without
Hmm.
Intruder because you can use open source tools. You can use Turbo Intruder if you want to write the Python for it. But you don't get Burp Suite Scanner with it. And Burp
Mm.
Suite Scanner is it's a really it's so useful, and you can cover a large application very quickly. It's also good for a sanity check. So if you're looking at an application and you've decided to check some things based on how the application behaves, it might be a specific, for example, if you can transfer money between accounts, you probably want to look at race conditions,
Hmm.
and that's purely based on like the application behavior. But then you might use Burp Suite to check, if it might find a random XSS somewhere, or it might find some issue, or it might find server-side request forgery that you've overlooked, or something like this. So for me personally, paying for Burp Suite Scanner, and quite a lot of the add-ons as well require the Burp Suite Pro, which are really, really handy. So it really speeds up your workflow.
Fair enough. And there was another one here. Can you explain? Yeah. So can you explain the distinction between black, white, gray box testing and web apps?
Yeah, so if you were to attack, for example, I think we have a vulnerability disclosure program. You'd have to double check the scope of it. For TCM, if you attack TCM's website, which I'm not saying you should do, go check the documentation or whatever, the VDP. That would be like black box testing. You don't actually know what the code looks like running under the hood. White box testing, you have the source code. So maybe you're attacking an open source application and the source code is on GitHub, or they gave you the source code. And then gray box testing is basically using both. So it's kind of like you have more access to information. I think given my background, I prefer like gray box testing, basically both. So I like having source code. I find it useful. And I also like having the application live and running so that I can verify some of my findings or thoughts and things like that. Sometimes I'll look at the code and I'll be like, I think this is exploitable, but I need to test it with the application, see how it actually behaves. So yeah, it's just kind of how much you have access to.
Fair enough. Let's see any other questions here. Are there do's and don'ts for automation scanning on web apps?
Yeah, this depends on your scope a lot, I think. So once again, if you're on a WebApp pen test, you're probably testing something. Well, there's two main situations. One is pre-release, so they haven't released it yet, so it doesn't matter too much if it breaks because it's not been released. So you're like pre-release testing. Or the other one, which will be like an annual pen test or something like this. And again, if you're attacking a live site, it's probably reasonably stable. Otherwise, it being internet facing, somebody's going to take it down at some point anyway. By default, I think a lot of scanners are pretty nice, I would say, like not too crazy, generally speaking. Like if you run Burp Suite Pro, you're probably not going to deny a service or take down a target. But that if you're scanning internal sites like old intranets, internal web applications that are just a bit janky, you should be careful with your scanning. You should cut it back to the checks that you need to do, and you shouldn't do things like, for example, some internal scanners like Nessus, for example. I was scanning a bunch of things. It was trying default credentials, locked out a bunch of accounts, and then the application couldn't access the DB cluster because the account was locked and things like that. So it's kind of like going a little bit wider scope than just WebApp pen testing. But I would say internal applications, old applications, you should be more careful, turn things on as you need them, but most of the time, I don't worry too much about it. I just run it. So, yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, so I guess there's a few more. What are the best ad ones for Burp Suite?
Oh, good. Yeah, I think. Okay, so there's a JWT add-on which I use quite a lot because I like working with JSON Web Tokens. Turbo Intruder is really, really good. There are a bunch of extensions for the scanner, so like ActiveScan++. There's the NoSQL injection add-on for that as well. Authorize, which is quite good for testing for BOLA, IDOR, broken function level authorization. So if you have like a user account and an admin account, you basically can just browse the application as one of them, and it'll tell you whether you have broken access control because it'll replay the same thing with the other user account, which is super handy. What are the plugins? Oh, there's some conversion plugins as well. So ones that you can just right click and you can switch like a form to JSON to XML and things like that. So you can really easily switch between content types and copy as Python. If you're doing research and you want to quickly write an exploit, being able to just right click and copy a request as Python, and it gives you the request as requests in Python, so you can put that into your scripts and then you can script some stuff. That's also super helpful as well. So yeah.
Cool. I think there's another one from, I should say, you often use test APIs on the
Yeah, APIs are everywhere. I cut like I think I did a post on this a little while ago saying that within the world of AppSec, APIs are the most widely used and underrated, like not looked at thing. I can't believe that like every web app course should be like at least 50% APIs. And in reality, APIs are not that different from normal HTTP requests, but you can do all of the same attacks. But the way the applications behave and the issues that they're more kind of like predisposed to having is a little bit different. So your approach to testing them is a little bit different. But yeah, especially with the rise of front end frameworks like React, single page applications, the fact that like I think Google says like 80 or 90% of the internet is run on APIs. APIs are so important. Yeah, I really if you want to get into web app testing, definitely start working with APIs.
Nice. That's let's see. All right, so I guess we're coming up on top of the hour. I guess like there's a few questions that I guess I can ask, and I threw this in, and then we'll get on that. I guess let's answer that last question. As a complete beginner, to hacking a bug manager, do I need my A+ network security plus? I guess we can both answer this, but I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, if you just want to do bug bounty, then I think not necessarily, but it does help with your wider skill set. So if you want to be in the cybersecurity realm, having having the fundamentals is really important in my opinion. And A plus, network plus, security plus is basically those fundamentals. So it's kind of like learning to code, right? It's going to help you a lot, but you don't have to do it. No, you don't have to do anything. And there'll be people in all sorts of roles with all sorts of diverse skills, with skills or with skills missing. So I would say it's worth doing, but it's really up to you. And if bug bounty is your true focus and you're never going to deviate from it, then yeah, there's a case to be made that you might not need it, but you're probably going to deviate from it. So
yeah,
it's probably going to help.
Yeah, exactly. That's what my take was. That that was my take as well. Like, A plus, network plus, security plus, and even getting into the cybersecurity space, like understanding, just like we talked about. I don't know if that was on stream or out stream, whatever, about like Active Directory and networking, and how data traverses on the network. Because now you said you have a post and a request and the HTTP, and how that data traverses, how you send it from the client to the server, and setting that TCP or three-way handshake or whatever you want to call it. If you don't understand how that really works, then you're going to be SOL, you know?
Yeah.
So having that, you know, fundamental knowledge of networking definitely will help you in any space. I don't know
Yeah.
anything about bug bounties. Could barely spell it, you know? But you know what I mean? Like, so I guess like we have about 5 more minutes. So I wanted to ask, so on a daily basis, right? Like you do your teaching, you do your stuff. So how do you, Alex, stay up to date in InfoSec and cybersecurity?
Mm.
What do you do? And do you use Twitter or Reddit or Hacker News or Bleeping Computers or?
Yeah. So, I mean, I used to, when I was working at Rakuten, and because I also had to manage teams and things like this, I put a lot of effort into staying up to date. I had to talk to a lot of dev teams week in, week out, because I think Rakuten has like 5 or 6 thousand developers, hundreds of projects and development teams. And so keeping on top of what's happening is really, really important. And mostly, I think through like news feeds, and I had some mailing lists. I also listened to the unsupervised learning podcast. Is it Daniel Mesler? I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he did like a weekly newsletter of like security news roundup. It's kind of like also technology, but that was super helpful. And I think Twitter is probably your best bet if you really want like cutting edge news. But for these days, like I don't really keep up with the news that much
Yeah, I'm the same
anymore.
way. I'm the same way.
Like it's just it's just too much stress. Like,
Yeah,
if something's really important, everybody will be talking about it, and I'll hear about it for sure, and then
like
I'll
the
look into
MGM
it if I
hack.
need to. Yeah. But I don't need to be like, walking into my job on Monday being like, there's this new CVE and we need to go in and we need to check all of our code bases and, we
Hmm.
need to update all of our signatures and our dependency checker. And, like when like Log4j hit and stuff like that, that was a tough time for lots of organizations. I don't need to worry about that kind of stuff anymore, which is quite nice. So these days I kind of like have taken a little bit of a step back from that kind of thing, and I am reasonably active on LinkedIn and stuff, but I tend to keep it to like a 10-minute session a day, and then
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
yeah.
Cool. So I got one last question. This is it from me. So, you know, you work hard, you do all your fun stuff, hack and sacking and all your studying and stuff like that. So what does Alex like to do outside of work? Like, what do you like? I heard you say work out. Are you into fitness or, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, I'd say casually. I used to be really into. I did a lot of running when I was, I would say like younger. Um, yeah, weirdly, like I didn't do anything for the first 18, 19 years of my life. I was very lazy, and then somehow when I hit 20, I got really into running. Did a lot of triathlon. Did like Ironman triathlon. Did some ultra marathons. Um, and things like that. And then more recently, I still cycle and swim a little bit, but just been a little bit more regular to the gym. Nothing too crazy, just doing like push pull legs and doing a little bit of rock climbing and stuff like that. So trying to be more active and get out the house once a day. And I kind of treat it as like chill time. So instead of
Mm-hmm.
watching Netflix, I kind of go to the gym and listen to a podcast, and that's my chill stuff. But in my spare time, yeah, I do a little bit of rock climbing. I surf. Uh, that's it really. I'm kind of boring. Not
Cool.
too many crazy things. I do like to write code in my spare time as well. That's kind of like a little side hobby. Is like building CTFs. I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy building just small web applications. It's a lot of fun.
Cool.
So.
So I guess we'll wrap things up. So I guess like you know, any last words, you know, for everyone who's watching and whoever wants to get in contact with you or connect with you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so LinkedIn's my best, like my most active platform, of course. But I have a link tree, which again is on my LinkedIn. So if you want to follow my other stuff, then it's all on there, like my courses and stuff and things like that. And yeah, I suppose my last thing is that a lot of people talking about like AI and where pen testing is going to be and stuff like that. And I think network penetration testing is becoming more competitive, and a little bit more standardized as well, which I think is important as the industry matures. But AppSec is still growing massively, and there's so many opportunities for application security engineers on internal teams to work more closely with developers and stuff. So if you're thinking like AppSec sounds cool, it's still a growing field. It's a booming field, and we need a lot more people in the world of AppSec. So just do it. It's fun. AppSec is cool.
Keep that for
That's
you
my
guys.
closing words.
Awesome, awesome, Alex. Thank you so much. So I really appreciate you and
Yeah,
everything that
thanks for
TC.
having me on. It's great.
Likewise, dude. Likewise, and everything that's you, TCM, and the whole shebang is back there. And thank you so much. And I'll see you guys on the flip side.
Great. Thanks very much.